What's up, people? Alright, I'm going to read you chapter 2 of my book, Thorns in the Veil. I hope you like all my horror decorations, along with my Nickelodeon pajamas. Alright. On my spot here. Right. Chapter 2. Sabrina, back at her bedroom, snaps back into reality of her faint memory of her grandma. I love and I miss you, Grandma, Sabrina says as she kisses her inner fingers of her right hand and touches it against a photo. The sound of a door closing and the jingling of keys in the next room. Her mom is home from work. Sabrina comes out of her room and walks to the kitchen. How was school, sweetheart? Her mom asks while walking towards the kitchen as well. It was okay, replies to her mom to Sabrina as she grabs a Mountain Dew out of the fridge. A little white lie, Sabrina told herself, wouldn't hurt anyone. She would rather not go into a lengthy conversation with her mom about what had happened today. The process seemed exhausting and was probably nothing anyways, just a bad dream. Hey, I was thinking tomorrow evening after school that we could go visit Grandma at the cemetery and go get some ice cream. Yeah, that's fine, Sabrina said, while walking away towards her room and closing the door behind her. Honey, have you eaten anything? Asked Tara. She got no response. Tara walked to the freezer and grabbed a frozen meal and shoved it in the microwave, slamming the door behind it aggressively, hitting the buttons. Her stomach was growling something fierce and throat was dry. She opened the fridge and saw a pitcher of water, some bottled domestic beer, Mountain Dew, or milk. Beer it is, she thought, and cradled it in her hand as if being the holy grail to her salvation. She opened the drawer to fetch a bottle opener, and a cockroach was in there walking around on the silverware. Ew! She slammed the drawer shut. Surprising that her daughter didn't hear that and come out. She's probably in her room with her headphones on, jamming to music and texting boys or something. Still wanting that beer, but afraid to open back up the drawer, she looked around to see what she could use. She'd seen people at parties years ago use the edge of the counter. Fuck it, she thought. If it breaks, it breaks. It'll just be another mess she has to clean up. She raised the beer in the air and swung it down near the corner of the counter. The neck hit just near the tip, bringing a hard thud. The recoil sent a shock to her wrist. If she was at a real party in her high school days, she would have been laughed at. She looked back at the drawer. It's just a cockroach, a measly bug. No bug is going to stand between her and her beer. Tara sits down her beer and grabs a paper towel and rips it off the roll. She slowly opens the door, and there it is, the ugly, disgusting thing sitting beside her bottle opener. She grabs a hold of it, easily not to squish its guts everywhere, and drops it in the garbage disposal. She turns on the water with her hand that's not holding the infected paper towel and flips on the switch. Take that, you son of a bitch, she says to herself while looking down at the drain. She throws away the paper towel and makes her way back to the drawer. Oh, sweet victory, she thought, while grabbing the bottle opener and popping the cap off. The microwave dinged, and she got out the Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and corn, peeled off the plastic, and threw it away. She reached in the drawer to grab a rag to put underneath the hot food, and there was another fucking cockroach. If only she could afford to move somewhere else. She closed the drawer and grabbed a fork out of the other drawer opposite of it and made her way to the couch. Tara grabbed a pillow off the other couch and used it to set her food on as she lay down and flipped on the television. America's Funniest Videos. I'll just leave it here. She could use more laughter in her life. She dug her fork into the processed fake meat and guided it to her mouth. A clink of metal as the fork hit the side of her lip piercing. The hunger monster within being satisfied and calming its growl. She devoured every bite as if she hadn't eaten in days until the plastic tray was empty. Tara removed the pillow from underneath the tray with one hand and set down the tray on the white coffee table with the other. She takes a big gulp of her beer and sets the bottle back down on the table. She fixates on the television in a trance, laughing here and there. Her full belly and tiredness of the day sinks in, and she finds herself drifting in dreamland. Tara awakens to see herself laying in a bed of flowers in her wedding gown and veil. She pushes herself up from the dirt and stands upright to look around. Thorns from the roses snagged in her veil, the sun blinding her view as an elderly woman walks near her in white clothing. "Grandma?" Tara asks as the figure draws closer. Dark clouds come over, the sky blocking the sun, and a loud crack of thunder shakes the earth. The figure dissolves as the flowers wilt and die all around her. Tara looks down and worms come up from the ground and start crawling around everywhere and on her bare feet. She wakes up to the faint sound of her beer bottle hitting the carpeted floor. Standing next to the illuminated TV is a darkened figure with no face. Unable to move and frightened, she screams and wakes up again in a cold sweat. She looks around the room to see that there's nothing there. Tara sits up and gasps for air and looks down on the floor at the spilled beer bottle. What the fuck was that all about? That had to be the scariest nightmare she's had in forever. Tara sways her legs over and sits on the edge of the couch looking down at the spilled beer bottle. Thank God there wasn't much beer left in the bottle to make that much of a wet factor in the carpet. She bends over to pick it up and walks to the trash can. Right there on the red trash can lid is another fucking cockroach. I'm too tired for this shit, she thought. She slammed the base of the bottle on the cockroach on the flip lid. The roach was squished and fell dead in the trash can along with the bottle. Tara made her way to her bedroom, and she saw Ozzy just staring beside the TV where that figure had been. "Ozzy, you're creeping me out. It was just a bad dream." He looked up at her and meowed. As she walked away, Ozzy went back to looking beside the TV. Tara closed the bedroom door behind her and plopped herself on her bed and pulled the comforter over her body. She smashed her head on her memory foam pillow and closed her eyes. Her mind drifted a little as of the current events, but she told herself that everything is fine. It was just a bad dream, nothing else. Maybe she'd pray to God, she thought. A quick prayer won't hurt, in a whisper. "Please, God, keep me and my family safe." The idea comforted her a little, and she slowly drifted back asleep. The sound of the alarm on her phone buzzing in her ear. Tara's eyelids opened slowly. She sighed and grabbed the phone to shut off the alarm. Ozzy is sitting at the edge of the bed on the floor looking up at her. In a groggy voice, she mustered up a sentence. "How'd you get in here?" Ozzy meowed, turned his head, and walked out of the bedroom. Nearly half an hour later, Tara drank her cup of coffee in her work attire and watched Sabrina get on the school bus from her bedroom window. A comforting thought, seeing her child go to school, because this mother doesn't want to go to jail. Tara did her time in juvie when she was younger. It was a time before her tattoos and piercings, a time of confusion and trying to find oneself. Shoplifting clothes used to be her thing. Her foster parents had money, but she would do it out of thrill and excitement as well as to impress friends around her, hanging around the wrong sort of people in retrospect. Tara was an orphan and bounced from foster home to foster home, never finding a fit, until Tori and Mike brought her in. They lived in Delaware, Ohio, in a brick castle-like home that sits upon a hill. Mike was a production manager for a well-known building company, and Tori was a home decorator. Tori had ovarian cancer at one time that had left her incapable of bearing a child. Cute brown-eyed baby Tara cuddled up in a blanket at an adoption center was an answer to the prayers. Tara had no idea who her biological parents were, no records or anything, just a big old no-show. But Tori and Mike took her in with welcome arms. She grew up in a loving home, but felt as if they were mostly absent in her life due to their career choices. Tara found herself drawn to the misfit crowds in school and began picking up their mannerisms. At the age of 15, her group of friends were into stealing things. Most of them had gotten away with it for a while. She would walk into a clothing store, pick out what she liked, and take it to the changing room. Once inside the changing room, she would take off the tags and her regular clothes, put the new ones on, and then put her regular clothes back on over the new ones. It was a simple scheme that proved results until one day a worker caught her. Tara walked out of the dressing room of a Walmart and proceeded to make her way to the front of a store. A Hispanic woman with a name tag that read Isabella on it walked into the changing room that Tara came out of. The employee dashed out of the room, quickly chasing after Tara. "Hey, you stop!" The sound of the woman's poor English accent transcending on her ears. She looked back, noticing that she had been busted, and picked up her pace. The woman ran up to her and grabbed her arm. "Get off me!" Tara yelled while struggling to escape, but the woman wouldn't let go. Tara drew back her fist and punched the woman right in the face. Cops were called, of course. Her foster parents were notified, but didn't post bail. Oh, the feeling of being in the back of a cop car she had not forgotten. The uncomfortable sitting against the back of your hands and contorting metal around your wrists, wondering what kind of hell awaits her. Tara briefly remembers being thrown in a room with a bunch of other girls after doing fingerprints and photos. She was wearing a matching orange jumpsuit like the rest of the inmates. Some were lying in their double bunk beds while others were frolicking around gossiping. She had just arrived right before her dinner was being served. A food attendant yelled out, "Fall in line, dinner is served." Everyone fast-paced walked to get in line, while Tara slowly followed behind. She grabbed a tray and slapped some mashed potatoes that looked super dry on a styrofoam bowl of soup that was mostly water and a slice of bread next to it along with a little carton of milk. There was like nowhere to sit that wasn't taken, so she sat at the nearest opening across from a group of girls. Tara lifted her piece of bread to take a bite out of it when a hefty woman with Queenie tattooed on her neck stood over her. "Hey, you gonna eat that?" "I was," replied Tara. A blonde girl sitting across from her held out her hand with a slice of bread. "Here, Queenie, you can have mine." Queenie snagged a loaf of bread and ate it in front of all of them while giving Tara a dirty ass look. Queenie walked away and Tara continued to eat her bread. "Hi there, I'm Trina. What's your name?" "I'm Tara," she said, nearly choking on the practically stale bread. That is where her friendship with Trina originated, and from that point on, they were near inseparable. Once out of juvie, they were always hanging when not at school, which ironically, they went to the same high school. Trina was a couple years older than her. She might have seen her in the hallways a couple times prior. Trina was always dressed preppy and looked very pretty. All the guys would drool over her, unlike Tara, who barely had any boobs, bony, and short black hair. She was perceived as an outcast loner on those days. Supposedly, Trina did her time in juvie for stealing money out of stepmom's wallet. After school hours, her and Trina would meet up, smoke pot, talk about boys, graffiti railroad cars, shoplift clothes, convince boys to buy them fast food. You know, typical teenage shit. One time, they even messed with an Ouija board in a cemetery. Unfortunately, nothing happened. They went to a small get-together at a boy's house late one night. It was just him and his buddy with their crappy stereo and their Boone's farm. Trina wasn't into either of the guys, but just wanted the free booze. Tara, who had introduced her to Philip and Stephen. Philip, a big football jock with blonde hair, approached her at lunch during school and told her that he was throwing a party at his place later that night and there was free alcohol. Tara remembered losing her virginity to Stephen. She was so nervous the whole time. Sadly, Trina didn't share the same failed experience. They left later that night from the boys' house and Trina parted ways and didn't even say a word to Tara. There was something up, but she couldn't figure it out. For the longest time, Trina ignored her phone calls and attempts of contact. It was until several years later, out of high school, they ran into each other at the grocery store. They exchanged a "hi, how are you?" and later that evening, she got a phone call from Trina. Trina mentioned that she was raped that night at the party, and rumors spread like rapid fire that she was a whore around the school. She was forced to switch schools and how she wanted to restart and to leave her past life behind. She ended up having an abortion in which systematically fucked up her psyche a little bit. Their friendship was somewhat back to normal, except their age and appeal to teenage antics was gone. They would meet up at the bar here and there after their jobs and have a drink. Tara living on her own as a telemarketer, Trina working at a local fish store. One night at the bar while Tara was sitting on a stool enjoying her beer, Trina walked up. She had a friend with her, a tall, dark-haired man with Ken-like features. "This is my friend Brian," Trina said to Tara. Tara felt mesmerized by the guy's blue eyes and lost in them. "Hi there," Brian said as he smirked at her and shook Tara's hand. Drinks led to past stories of debauchery bringing upon laughter. They played some rounds of pool, taking turns, and then on to darts. Tara couldn't remember much, but she knew she slept with Brian that night. Trina was a little salty about that, but forgave her. Tara fell in love with the man, got married in August inside a church. Only Trina and her foster parents, Ted and Linda, and some of their family and friends were there for her side. The rest, that was a clerical error that I changed in my later book. I should say Tori and Mike, not Ted and Linda. Oops. Okay. They both can rot in hell as far as she's concerned, she thought. At least she has Sabrina. Her only hope is that her daughter doesn't follow her footsteps and gets her act straightened out. The bus drives down the road and Tara takes one last sip of her coffee before she walks out the door for work. Alright, that concludes chapter 2 of my book, Thorns in the Veil. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for chapter 3 and look up my other books, Cat's-Tail Explicit Content and Tales from the Shadows, and check out my song Inner Beast on Spotify, Pandora, and iHeartRadio and YouTube Music.